is a new trial. I just want to make sure that's clear on the
Yeah,
record.
the record's clear. You and I are just both sitting here. I'm doing some other work, and you're doing whatever you're doing.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. State your name, please.
Dr. Daniel E. Buffington, Buffington.
Okay. Have you ever testified in court?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and approximately how many times?
Oh, since the early 90s, probably now in excess of 500.
Okay. And what's your specialty?
Clinical pharmacology and toxicology.
Okay. Have you ever been, I assume you've been qualified in court in those fields of expertise more than 500 times?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you give us your education, training, and background?
Yes, sir. I did my undergraduate studies in biology and biochemistry at the University of South Florida, a native of the Tampa Bay area. Following that, I did a Doctor of Pharmacy degree, or PharmD, at Mercer University in Atlanta. After that, did postgraduate specialization at Emory University in residency and fellowship in clinical pharmacology and tox. And then after that, also completed an MBA with a healthcare focus
Okay.
from Mercer.
And have you reviewed the case records and interviewed Tracey Nix
Yes, sir, I did.
in this case? Okay. Do you have any particular methods that you'd like to tell us about as far as what you did and what you used?
Yes, sir. So similar to a clinical evaluation with a patient in any inpatient or outpatient setting, my goal was to go through a variety of records that would be beneficial to understand her history, medical, medication, family and social history, laboratory results and data, any prior hospital and clinic records that would help to identify and support an understanding of what medications she was on, pharmacy records, helping to confirm exactly what substances in terms of medication she was taking around this time.
Okay. And can you tell us what all you reviewed?
So I reviewed hospital and clinic records. I reviewed law enforcement records from this particular case. It also included a clinical interview with Ms. Nix as well to have a better understanding of what was happening in her life and any symptoms that may have been consistent with the adverse side effects of the medications that she was being prescribed.
Okay. Anything else that you reviewed in this case?
Yes, so in addition to my training and understanding, it's imperative to stay current in the medical literature. So I did look at medical literature surrounding these particular medications. That can come from a variety of clinical trial data. It can come from FDA-approved materials that a manufacturer is required to organize and make public to healthcare practitioners to understand the therapeutic benefits, but also the adverse side effect profiles and risks for medications. There's a variety of other databases that we use in clinical practice. We call them pharmacovigilance, and that is where we, not only when a product gets approved by the FDA, does the manufacturer have to disclose for a specialty panel to understand, to approve that product for use in the United States. That type of tracking goes on for years. So we have MedWatch, we have the FARS database, we have multiple established database systems that healthcare practitioners contribute to even after a product is approved and in the market. And in many cases, we find more out after a product is out in use in large number of patients than we did even at the time a product was approved. So there's also a series of drug interaction databases where if I'm sitting down in a clinic or if I'm doing a forensic review, I can put the patient's medication profile into that data set and then identify if there are in fact drug-drug interactions, meaning one drug competes with another, one drug causes a complication in another. And to a great extent, what we know now is all of us in this room may metabolize the same drug differently. That could be that you don't get as much effect versus the other person. It could be that you get a dramatically higher effect than the other person. So I went through each of those tools that I use in my own clinical practice setting to review this case.
Okay. Anything else other than what you indicated that you reviewed? In
I
this
think that's
particular-
comprehensive. Yes, sir.
comprehensive.
Yes.
Okay. And did you review case-related depositions?
Yes, sir.
And you already indicated police reports
Yes, sir.
and some transcripts
Correct.
and text messages
Yes, sir.
and photographs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you render a specialty opinion within your education, training, and experience as to the origin and cause of any issues that Tracey Nix may have had with regard to any altered cognitive status at the time of this event on November 1st, 2022?
Yes, sir, I did.
And could you tell us, please, what your findings were?
Yes, sir. The findings are that the collective list of medications that I confirmed by medical and pharmacy records gave me a clear indication of what she was being prescribed simultaneously during that time.
Okay.
The symptoms that she was experiencing, as based on the interview and based on her statements, are consistent with the adverse side effects with regards to cognitive status, confusion, attention deficits that come with those medications. And,
Okay.
and in fact, there were multiple combined reasons for concern or interactions between the medications she was prescribed.
Okay. Did you identify any significant variables in her past medical history that factored into your findings?
Yes, sir.
And could you tell us about that?
So specifically when looking at her case is in patients 60 and 65 and older, we use significant caution when introducing or prescribing certain medications. In fact, we even maintain a national list or registry of those products called the Beers list. That's named after Dr. Beers. And in that, she was on multiple medications that would be of high concern or risk factor for these types of side effects that are recognized in the Beers list, as well as in the FDA-approved packaged materials and the other patient safety databases as well.
And well, these were actually the medications you're talking about were all prescribed to her?
That is correct.
And you know who did the prescribing?
I have it in my notes, but I didn't take the practitioner's
Okay.
name to memory.
Okay. Did you identify any significant variables in her past social, family, and work history that factored in your findings?
Yes, sir.
And could you tell us about that?
So in addition to her age and history of insomnia and depression, fibromyalgia and sleep apnea, things that she was being treated for, I also identified that she had a family member, a brother, a sibling, who was also experiencing, going through symptoms of early onset dementia, which would have been concerned. She expressed concern that she may attribute some of what she was feeling or experiencing with confusion or mental clouding as being something familial that was happening. There was also work-related examples. She was previously in a leadership position in a school, had transitioned from that based on age and duration of work time, was working for another school. In that situation during this time, she expressed that she, as well as her supervisor, were noticing difficulty for her to identify and retain attention and completion of tasks, again, consistent with the types of symptoms that these medications, when used, can cause.
Did you identify any significant variables in her past sleep-related disorder history that factored into your findings?
Yes, sir. Combination of insomnia and sleep apnea, both are disruptive disorders to getting what we call restorative sleep. That impacts someone during your sleep. In fact, some of the medications she's on actually are prescribed or used to help with sleep, but they can cause what we call complex sleep-related disorders or behaviors. And that's where the risk is in a percentage of patients, you're giving it to help them sleep, but it may actually cause abnormal behaviors, thought processes, or disrupted sleep. And that can be something that occurs during the night or during a period that the individual is sleeping, whether it's night or day. Or it can also be what we refer to as next day cognitive decline or next day drowsiness, where the individual isn't as sharp. And it's not just that they aren't trying to get enough sleep. It's not just that they aren't taking care of themselves. It's something that these particular medications induce on a person and actually worsen the quality of sleep and cause mental clouding and confusion the next day, even after they've been up.
And what drugs are we talking about?
So those in particular are Ambien and cyclobenzaprine and also lorazepam. So there's different, each of those represent a different class of medications, but each of those carry with them significant concerns and warnings over the ability to produce these types of changes in cognitive status, clarity, attention, and thought process.
Are any of these medications on the Beers list?
Yes, sir, each of those.
All of them are?
I would have to double check for the cyclo, but I'm pretty sure it is as well. But the benzodiazepines and the zolpidem, that's the generic name for Ambien, is clearly on that list. It's so much on the list that the FDA requires the manufacturers to disclose, makes it a substantial warning, and has even in recent years said it has to be disclosed to patients when they're doing direct-to-consumer advertising. So that means that it's not just something that only a few people should be warned of. It's something that everyone should be warned of.
Let's look at Ambien. As a pharmacologist and a toxicologist, would you recommend that Ambien be given to a patient 65 years of age on a long-term basis? Absolutely not.
It would be for short-term use in an acute emotional scenario where the insomnia has occurred abruptly. It is not going to be safe to use long-term. And in fact, there are alternatives that would make it not even desirable in my practice setting to recommend it to someone 65 and older. In fact, the incidence that I see those types of side effects and problems is high even in patients under 65. It's not a product that I recommend.
Okay. And what about, I'm going to use a trade name, Flexeril?
Yes, Flexeril is a muscle relaxer. So Ambien or zolpidem was a medication used to help induce and keep you to get a sound, restful sleep when it's doing its job right. Flexeril is something that actually relaxes a person if they're having muscle spasms, if they're having fibromyalgia. That's the times it's reached for as a therapeutic tool. Many patients have to discontinue that product because they have cognitive status changes, they have balance changes, normally able to traverse, walk safely. Next thing you know, we're identifying they're stumbling, they're falling, they're feeling dizzy, confused. So it's a medication that, again, it's been around a long time, but it's got limited use and should not be used in patients 60 and older.
Lorazepam.
Lorazepam's yet another therapeutic class. It's in the benzodiazepines, so like Valium and Xanax and others. It is a medication that has many uses, but many of them are because of its side effects. So it is a muscle relaxant and something that can sedate someone. So in that case, some people, prescribers, may suggest it for sleep. The problem is it can also cause extended next day drowsiness. So it's not optimal. It's not optimal in an older patient. It's also something that can cause hallucinations, anxiety, even though it's something that can treat anxiety. So it's a medication with many different effects on the human body and the brain, but would not be recommended for someone who's having confusion or attention issues.
Okay. What about a person 65 years of age or older?
No, sir. It would not be recommended, and certainly not for long-term use as a sleep aid.
Okay. What about the combination of these medications? Would that be appropriate to prescribe that on behalf of a patient, all three of these in combination with each other?
No, sir. Given the circumstance of her unique patient profile, of her as a person, as an age, as medical conditions, it would not be recommended. So this was not an optimal drug regimen profile for her. The other issue is that it would not be recommended based on the fact that each of these can cause lingering, enhanced complications that are not helpful for the patient.
With respect to the zolpidem, also known as Ambien, did you determine that she was on an appropriate dosage of that?
Given her age and size, that is actually a large dose. So again, if you dive deeper into the analysis of her medication regimen, it wasn't even like a starting dose. It wasn't an introductory dose. It was actually a substantially large dose, and that would not be recommended. In addition, I looked at the combination of medications and for drug interactions, and there were numerous drug interactions between the medications she was on.
Do you consider it to be malpractice for a practitioner to prescribe these 3 medications, including zolpidem, in the amount that it was prescribed?
In this particular case, I would express significant concerns, combined with the fact that was there a monitoring program in place to identify those? And in the review of the records, I didn't see that. These look like medications that have been put on, doses increased, and then left in place. And I saw that throughout 21 and 2022.
Okay. Other than what you've testified to, do you identify or have you identified any significant variables in her past memory and recall history that factored into your findings?
Well, her own testimony of what had been changing at a workplace setting, she also identified that there were times when driving on daily tasks that she had gotten lost in areas that she was previously familiar with. So whether or not this was an element of an onset or development of dementia-type symptoms, or whether it was dementia-related activities as a result of the medications, both of those would be a concern in her medical history.
Other than what you've already testified to, did you identify any significant variables in her past medical and hospital records that factored into your findings?
Just as I stated before, the presence of insomnia and sleep apnea would be even greater reasons for a prescriber to avoid these medications. Then there was the age, and then was looking at them in their totality, all of them together, and saying this is an okay regimen to stay on, was really overlooking the risk that was being induced.
And obviously you review the medical literature. Can you be specific?
Yes, sir. So first and foremost would be the FDA-approved package insert on these medications. They specifically warn of these concerns. The Beers list is an industry-wide tracking tool. It specifically gives concerns and warns in her situation. And then in addition, the pharmacovigilance databases, the MedWatch, the FARS, also highlight those, and those are available to any healthcare practitioner to use as a clinical reference. All of these things demonstrate a consensus that individually these medications and combined would be disadvantageous in her situation, and the symptoms that she expressed as concerns are directly consistent with those symptoms we would see.
Okay. Did you find support or consensus in the published research and medical literature to support your clinical findings and opinion?
Yes, sir, an abundance.
Okay. Can you be specific?
Yes, sir, the MedWatch, the package insert, the FARS data set, publications that are specific to individual medications and their drug interactions as classes. I have large sets of files for tracking and teaching these very points as well.
Can you tell us the opinions you reached after your review in this case?
Yes, sir. The opinion is that her collective medication profile at that time placed her at risk, and the adverse side effects that she was experiencing, noting, they even appeared in her medical record, is that after the lorazepam was added early in 2022, this occurred in November of 2022, that there was a development of symptoms consistent with and do appear to be have been caused by her collective adverse side effects from her drug regimen.
Okay. Make any other opinions in this case, sir?
I think that's it.
All right. I'm going to... Sorry not to be formal and ask to approach the witness, but I guess I don't need to do that.
It's your courtroom, I'm just sitting
It's
here.
my courtroom.
I may get up and
Yes,
leave
sir.
and come back, you never know.
All right.
Your courtroom.
Thank you. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, sir. So this would have been part of those methods. So when I sit down with a patient in an exam room, in a hospital room, in a clinic, anywhere, this exercise is the same. I start off by looking at what their baseline conditions are that need treated. Then look looking at what has been previously prescribed as therapy versus what's currently medication profile. Most of that is, the objective is to discern, are they on the right medications to treat their conditions? One of the next steps as a specialist is to actually go a layer deeper and say, are the medications that the individual is on, looking at them individually, but then looking at them collectively, have the potential to create problems? The number one healthcare tool and treatment modality in the United States is medications. More than surgeries, more than anything else. The number one healthcare related harm, meaning you go for treatment and you have complications, is adverse drug events. So the two of those go hand in hand. This table that I prepared demonstrates on the left column the list of medications that she was on collectively.
Okay.
Across the top are adverse side effects that are consistent with neurologic status, cognitive status, behavioral changes that take place. So these are neurologic complications. In the boxes across the table, anywhere there's a red X, that drug carries with it the risk of producing that side effect.
Okay.
So I refer to this as, once we've looked at, are you on the right drugs, I'm now looking at, are there problems by combining, prescribing any one of them or combining, that may be contributing to your baseline symptoms or now new symptoms. So in this case, we call this the side effect burden, meaning not one but multiples of these medications are all causing extremely similar adverse side effects. So it's synergistic, meaning just like we want to say we're treating the core issue while you got the prescription, we're also now collectively creating a more dangerous scenario for the patient.
Okay. Is there a way you can go through and tell us the drug she was on and the reactions as per that table?
Yes, sir. So the first drug and greatest concern is Zolpidem or Ambien. And in fact, it's the sustained release, and she was on an extremely large dose, bigger than a dose that I would anticipate taking. So you can have CNS depression or mental symptom depression. You can have complex sleep-related behaviors. That's where an individual goes into a REM cycle and it's not normal. It
Sleep
walking, sleep talking, sleep driving, sleep doing other things that they're not cognitively in command of. So abnormal thoughts and behaviors, physical behaviors at the same time. They could have cognitive dysfunction or confusion, disorientation, amnesia, hallucinations, delirium, depression, drowsiness, a whole host. Then if you go to the next drug, cyclobenzaprine, very different product. This one's used for muscle relaxant. And in fact, it carries with it most of those same adverse side effects as a potential complication. Even her meloxicam, we didn't mention that earlier, the brand name of that is Mobic. That would be like an advanced version, more potent version of an ibuprofen or a naproxen. And you say, well, clearly that's an anti-inflammatory. That would not have any central nervous system adverse side effects. I'll challenge you to look at the literature. It has adverse side effects because of the changes in cells and receptors in the brain at the same time. It has a different function, but it carries with it side effects, not as many. Cymbalta or duloxetine was her antidepressant. It has many of these same. And then adding the Ativan is probably worse than the ones above individually, but now it's created a compound effect for mental status change and cognitive decline.
Okay. All right. Any other opinions that you formed in this case that we haven't talked about?
I think that's it.
Okay. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. I'm done.
Since it's my court, you're excused.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I just, for clarity of the record, if the public will come around and looks at this, I do want to make sure it's clear that the deposition the state took of Dr. Buffington October 30th of 2024 is attached to the motion that the state filed to exclude these witnesses November 26th of 2024.
That was my recollection. It was approximately 90 pages, 3 different depositions were attached.
Yes.
Second page motion, 83 pages of other.
Correct, Your Honor. I just want to make sure that's also on the record, since we're just, I guess, putting stuff on the record here.
That's fine, you guys can do that. I'm gonna go back to my chambers for some other minute. Go ahead.
Going to call Brian Esposito, Your Honor.